Let's get our chart pulled up. Let's drop in the Discord. Over here. Let's get good and warmed up here while we're waiting on the folks. Ba, 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 da, ba. Hey, what's up, dude? Alright, just getting warmed up, getting loosened up and limbered up. Not much exciting going on otherwise. Oof. Did you finish your school stuff? Refresh over here. Like straight into it? Dang, man, that's rough. I don't care about that. Leave me alone, Twitch. Hadn't really played today, so kind of get into the swing of things. This strap attached to. Yeah, there we go. I'm just playing one note. Nothing's actually changing. I should just play one of the guitars with the lumen lay dots and just play them with the lights out. So you just see shadows flashing across glow in the dark dots. I mean, that would actually be pretty cool if they were bright enough to do that, but probably not with this webcam. Also been doing a lot of working out with like those dumbbells that I have, and like the day after you do forearms, man, everything's still all weird and rubbery. But been splitting it up and doing like upper arms one night, then lower arms the next night, and then like chest and shoulders the next night, then a day off, and then repeating. Well, yeah, I finally have time where I can like actually, do proper routines and stuff with them and not be completely dead. That's the problem with trying to fit it in between, driving to Canton 3 times a week and back is just simply won't have any energy at all left. And unfortunately, I don't have anything to do lower body with, really, aside from just, walking. Somewhat. It feels better just to be able to, like, see some progress, psychologically, if anything. To actually see, like, some muscle growth and tone and stuff. But been having trouble finding things that work well for triceps. Like I've been doing like hammer presses and kind of like inclined hammer presses like that, and then been doing like, you know, kickbacks leaned over the chair, but like say this like the overhead tricep extensions and stuff like that absolutely wreck my elbows, and a lot of other tricep exercises do too. So I've been going through tons of sites looking at different exercises, trying to find ones that are minimal there that have minimal strain. Same issue with some shoulder exercises too. But then, you know, you start getting into like sweaty fit nerds who all argue with each other that this exercise is terrible for you, you shouldn't do it. You know, for every single exercise, there's someone who says that exercise is terrible either because it injures you or because it doesn't work or it doesn't maximize your gains compared to this other exercise. And to be fair, a lot of the exercises do look completely stupid. Like your body is not supposed to do that. And I can totally believe that people that do them regularly get injured. Especially like it seems like the CrossFit people are the worst about it. They're like, no, dude, take this 50-pound plate and put it on the back of your neck and then lean over as far as you can with your back completely straight. Try to get your head between your knees and then hurl yourself upwards. So I've been trying to weed through it and find people who appear to be reputable, people who have actual credentials and stuff. Then if you go on YouTube, though, anybody who has any kind of credentials has like a whole bunch of hit videos with a bunch of other sweaty nerds talking about how they're full of it and how you should buy their licensed exclusive workout plan to get ripped in like 15 days or less, bro. And also invest your life savings in creatine. And just eat it raw. Just eat it by the handful. Just straight up powder on your face. It's pretty funny. All the fit memes were true. Let's see what we got. Alright, starting to get some people showing up. Hey, did you get? I changed my my going live message Yeah, following goal. The follower goal is halfway. We are halfway there. Not bad, really, considering kind of how niche the channel is. But did you get like my go live, my new custom go live message? I don't remember exactly what I set it to, but I changed it to something like, come jam with me or something to that effect. No, like the email notifications or like the Twitch push notifications for the app. Whenever somebody goes live, instead of just saying like the heuristic went live, have it say, I had it say like the heuristic is live, come jam or something like that. Because they said, oh, you need to make a custom go live message. It'll increase your engagement. Yeah, you might have to have push notifications enabled or something. Okay, so let's get the tune up on screen, and I need you to tell me, anybody in chat, to let me know if this is too big, too small. Like it looks like it's fairly normally sized on my screen, but I can make it larger if need be. I think it's relatively unobtrusive as it is, but it might be too hard to follow along with at this size. So let me know what you think. I think that's probably, looking at it on my other monitor, that's probably too small. So let's see, to adjust it, I want to do this. Got to grab the little box. See, about like that. Ba-da-ba. Uh-oh. Let's see. Whoops, wrong thing. Hold on. To adjust this. What I can pull, the side off a little bit. Get rid of those things. How about that? I mean, I can actually like read that on screen at least. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Well, if I make it much bigger, it's gonna like start to cover me up, and I mean, come on now. Also, if anybody actually wants this chart, I can post it in the Discord and then you can download it for yourself and use it on your own if need be. All right, let me get over here to my copy of it. All right, let's see. Let's escape. Let's X out of that. Let's go click something else. There we go. All right. Now, hold on a minute. way should I scoot? I scoot this way a little bit. Tilt this down a touch too, so you can see the guitar a little better. Problem is I want to sit over to the right, which then puts me behind the thing. So as you can see, it's called Blues for Alice, but it's a Charlie Parker tune, so it's a bebop tune. So it's taking essentially like a blues structure and it's making it a good bit more complex. But at its core, we can kind of see the outline of a standard sort of 12-bar blues type progression, essentially. Do you remember how a standard 12-bar would go? That's our intro. We can skip that. Oh, hey Twisty, what's happening? Thanks for stopping in. If you'll check the, like the channel schedule down there. We're gonna start going for a little more structure. Doing like theme days and stuff like that, kind of alternating every other week. So like we're gonna have Metal Monday every other Monday, stuff like that. Friday night jazz, etc., etc. Just to kind of give us a little more focus. So like if there's something specific from like a particular genre or that would fit a certain theme or something like that you're into, like jump into the Discord and drop it in like one of the recommendation channels. I set up recommendation channels for it. So like, I can actually start playing things that people want to hear or that people are interested in learning or checking out or whatever. And if you could throw that Discord link up. Discord's basically just like a chat server type thing, essentially. So a lot of people use it for games, like for specific games or whatever else. In this case, we're using it to talk about stuff that we do on here. So if there's something you come up with at any time in the middle of the week, or you want to talk about something guitar related, just jump into the Discord and we can discuss it. Hold on a second. Let me see. Ba-da-ba. I gotta delete these old channels. Whoop. There you go, Discord. Dang it. Come back. Yeah, dude. So like anything you got, jump in there and let us know any kind of suggestions as far as like tunes or, music theory or anything, whatever you come up with. Because otherwise it's all me just kind of like pulling stuff, out of my own head. But I think it'd be a lot more fun and engaging if, they can work with people like kind of with things that they're interested in. Alright, dude. Thanks for stopping in. Alright, so let's see. Let me get that pulled back up. And then we'll get back to what we're talking about. I did kind of open a can of worms, or maybe the gates of hell, depending on how you look at it, because every other Wednesday we're going to do Weeaboo Wednesday, where we do anime theme songs, video game theme songs, that kind of stuff. Because it seems like basically all of the requests I've gotten so far are for those. And I'm certainly happy to do some, so if you've got specific ones you want, jump in the Discord and let me know. But I've got to delete really quick. Let me delete these old request channels, because we've got new ones now. Edit channel. Delete channel. RIP. And then RIP. And we should be good to go. Rusty Shackelford. Rusty Shackelford. Pocket Sand is next. I'll have to do that one sometime too. This is actually a cool guitar riff. But anyways, back to Blues for Alice. So, if we're talking about like say a 12-bar blues, a standard blues format, does anybody in chat know what that is, or does everybody in chat know what that is, or do we need to go over that before we start talking a little bit more about the structure of this actual tune and how it kind of mixes things up, or how it builds on that? Because I will be happy to talk about it or go over it again. Maybe we should anyway. Dude, you totally remember what a 12-bar blues is. But it is probably a good idea to review it. Oh yeah, so it's generally a 1-4-5, but it's a specific sequence of a 1-4-5, right? So typically if we're playing with like sort of a 4-4 feel, we'll have something like, you know, depending on if we're doing what's called a fast 4 progression or not, we'll have like say 4 bars of the 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then 2 bars of the 4 chord, 2 bars of the 1 chord, then depending on the variation, either 2 bars of the 5 or 1 bar of the 5, 1 bar of the 4, 1 bar of the 1, and then the 5 at the end for a turnaround. If we were to play that with a more kind of jazzy feel, something to that effect. Typically in jazz, we start to add a few more changes into that, especially as we start to get close to the turnaround. So we might have the 1 chord, there's our 4 chord, then our 1, our 6 chord, 2, 5, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. Something like that, right? Fairly common sort of sound. That's a really straightforward, but kind of swing feel with it. But the basic idea is essentially like a type of a 1-4-5 spread out with a specific sequence across those 12 bars. You know, so if we're playing with kind of cut and dry, which is a lot of early jazz was effectively just blues forms like that. Things like all blues, and I mean that's a little later, but you know, going all the way to things like all blues or going to a lot of Thelonious Monk stuff, they tend to more or less be blues forms. But the bop guys tended to take those forms, whether it be a blues form or whether it be rhythm changes or whether it be, you know, just like say standards, which, you know, as we talked about, tend to be sequences of like 2-5-1s, would take them and they'd start to add in like say non-functional harmony, substitutions, all kinds of things to sort of spice them up and make them a little bit more interesting to play over. So that's kind of what happens here in this tune. Even though it's called a blues, when you're listening to it straight up, it doesn't really sound what we tend to think of as bluesy. You know, kind of notey. Lots of like major scale sounds, lots of sort of chromatic and diminished sounds, those types of things, rather than sort of the stereotypical blues scale sound. But we would certainly use those as points. But the progression starts to take on kind of a lot more color as well. So if we look at it, and we'll skip the piano intro up there. It's its kind of own little thing. It's a little separate sort of introduction. We're going to start at the F in the second bar because that's kind of where the main progression starts, and where the main melody that's being played by the saxophone starts, right? So we're starting with E. We have a bar, or I mean F, excuse me, a bar of F. 1, 2, 3, 4. But then instead of staying on that or going to the 4 chord, which in this case would be a B flat, right away, and just kind of going 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, like that, we're going. And we're getting a lot more involved, a lot more changes being subbed in. So we have our 1 chord, then we have our 7 chord, which is the first inversion of our 5 chord, actually, in a sense. Then we're going to the 6 chord as a secondary dominant, which is acting as a 5 to, excuse me, not the 6 chord, the 3 chord, as a 7, which is acting as a secondary dominant to the 6, which acts as a 2 to the 2 as a secondary dominant. So we have like a 2, 5, 1, 5, 1. We have this sort of chain of 2, 5, 1s that are getting us to that 4 chord instead of just a direct. Instead we have to get there. So those 2, 5, 1 cliches that we talked about are being incorporated, but they're being incorporated in places where they might not normally be, where they almost never are really in a traditional straight ahead blues, like 1, 4, 5 type progression, 12-bar blues type progression. So straight off the bat, we're getting a lot more harmonic movement. And depending on which chart you look at, you'll see little variations of these chords. This chart, for instance, uses the 7 chord as just a plain E minor 7, while some other charts will have it as what the actual 7 chord is a minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished chord, which then when it moves to the A7 would become an A7 flat 9. And we can come up with lots and lots of voicings to make these changes as well. Etc., etc. Depends on how we want our voice leading to go, but I tend to like the sound of it progressing down the neck this way. It gives us this nice sort of shift coming down the B string. On and on and on. Nice connections. Etc. But if we like measure it out, we're actually still landing on our 4 chord in the same place that it would typically come in a 12-bar blues, which is pretty cool. But we have, instead of 4 bars of just the 1 bar of the 1, then a 2, 5 going from the 7 to the 3, 2, 5 from the 6 to the 2, 2, 5 from essentially we're taking the C chord, which is normally the 5, and we're making it minor and using it as a 2. For the 1 is a 5, which acts as a secondary dominant for the 4 chord. And this particular chart's playing that as a 6 chord. Some charts will play it as a 7 chord. Some charts will just say B flat and kind of leave it up to you as to which particular extension you want to use, as long as it kind of fits with the melody. Then we have our transition kind of making our way all around the 1 chord, where we would normally be returning 2, 5, 2, 5, 2, 5, kind of moving, make our way all the way to the 2, 5, 1, 2, 5 for the turnaround. And so we got lots of substitutions, we got lots of non-functional harmony, which non-functional means it's not specifically revolving to to like say the 1 or the 4 to a particular given chord. It's not working as like a 2-5 to a new root or anything to that effect. Ba-da-ba, do-da-ba-da-da. Hold on a second, I got a message. Oh, it's something stupid. Hey, what's up, dude? Ba-da-ba. We're talking about reharmonization of 12-bar blues progressions. What you up to? Yeah, it's gonna be fun stuff like this on jazz night and on like music theory night, those kinds of things. That though music theory night will probably start from scratch, like see if I can get some like some basic resources together and start to posting stupid crap, and I swear to God, I'd get some basic resources together and kind of start with the fundamentals. We're kind of jumping into the deep end, talking about stuff in here a little bit. You'd actually probably, given the kind of stuff you're into, you'd probably find music theory pretty interesting. The kind of internal math, not the actual physics necessarily, though music theory does occasionally, when you take it to its extremes, really start working with the actual physics, but like the internal sort of mathematics of how chords work, all that kind of stuff, how things are put together and assembled in different ways, and the kinds of sounds that they produce. Yeah, string theory. This is a string, and it vibrates. It does not contain the possibility, an infinite number of possibilities, though, because we only got so many frets on it. We're gonna get like total stoner moment. It would be like, bro, what if all the super strings, bro, were just like strings on God's guitar, man? Whoa, bro, you're blowing my mind, bro. Man, need some stronger stuff for that. Alright, anyways. So let's look at some simple voicings that we can use to start playing the changes of this. I'm going to try to use voices that are fairly consistent, like kind of relatively easy bar chord voices without getting into like crazy fingerings or anything like that. So we can start playing the basic changes of this tune, because that's kind of the first thing we want to do. We want to get the outline of the chord changes down before we start trying to blast into the melody. And the melody is fairly tricky. I picked this particular song because it's one that I kind of know but don't know completely, and so I wanted to actually work on it with everybody in chat. No, as in like physically know how to play it. I know the melody in my head, but I definitely have spots in it that need polishing up. Well, let's try to get the basic chord changes down to start with. So the F that I'm usually starting with is like an F major or F major 7. As a rule, when like a lead sheet, a jazz chart says just F as in like a major chord, you tend to be able to, or in many cases are actually implied, that you're playing like a major 7 chord. It's fairly uncommon just to hear regular old F, something like that. And probably the easiest voicing of F major 7 to use in this case would be this one up here at the 8th fret. What I'm doing is I'm barring down the 8th fret, starting on the A string, going all the way down. Then I'm I'm taking my ring finger, placing it on the 10th fret on the D string, middle finger, 9th fret on the G string, and then pinky, 10th fret on the B string. So that gives me very pretty chord voicing, completely closed, so it's very movable. The other voicing I would tend to use would be this one, but this one's a little bit tougher to play, and the sort of arrangement of the notes aren't quite as firm. This one's a little more open sounding. So 10 on the A, bar down, or excuse me, 8, bar down, 10, 9, 8, then 10 being caught by the bar on the bottom string. If you have trouble with the bar, you could always just play the inside 4 strings and you still have all the notes you need for the chord. You just won't have that high up here. If you listen to, like, say, Freddie Green, guys like that who played in big bands and stuff, they would actually usually reduce the chord down to just 3 or even 2 notes, keep them super small. But since we're playing alone at the moment, use something a little more full and use something in the root position where we have the root and the bass. So you get this F major 7. Then if we stick strictly to the chart, to an E minor 7 rather than, say, an E minor 7 flat 5, which is what I usually use there, the bar can just go down a half step to the 7th fret, then ring finger on the 9th on the D string, and then middle finger on the 8th on the B string. So another fairly simple little bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. We just play like a basic swing strum with it. Keep, have you got your guitar? Are you working on this with me? Da-da-ba. Hopefully everybody anybody who's watching who has a guitar has got it out and gonna try to go through it with me, because that's a lot more fun. Working on it with me in spirit. Dude, Hype, you should go get a guitar, legit. Something for you to keep your hands active. We can even do a sequence of, like, beginner lessons and stuff like that to help you get some of the basics going. But anyways, yeah, bro, get one. And I would say probably for the kind of stuff, like, the music that you would want to make, and for ease of playability, you would want to get an electric guitar. Unless you specifically want to play the folks musics. Texas. I ain't got Fresno, but I got Texas. Anyways, aside from that digression, you have our F major 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then down to the E minor 7. Then to an A7. The voicing I'm using for the A7 is, again, essentially a bar chord voicing. One of these days we're going to get over dust. One day, when they reissue it. And this is just a 5th fret bar with 7th fret on the A string, 6th fret on the G string, and then I'm keeping my pinky on the 8th fret on the B string, so that's the same note that our middle finger is playing in the previous chord. That gives the chord sort of a semblance of being connected because, well, they are. But also the root note of the previous chord, the E minor 7 chord, is the note that our ring finger is now playing here. So we get a very smooth sounding transition versus that voicing of the A7 or that voicing of the A7, where it makes it sound like there's a bigger jump. Though, you know, there are cases when you might specifically want that. I don't think Rorbot played Mag. Sadly, Mag was its own special kind of amazing. We actually found out about Dust because of Mag. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, Mag's dying," and a bunch of dudes are like, "Oh, well, you got to come play Dust. It's the closest thing." Or it was supposed to be, but you know they couldn't figure out how to enable more than like 32 players or whatever without the game exploding. PlanetSide's far and away the closest thing now, but still kind of different, you know, because there aren't any active game modes. Mag had specific game modes with objectives, while PlanetSide is, you know, just conquer the territory. But anyways, so 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4 of the F major 7, 2 beats of the E minor 7, 2 beats of the A7. So that first little sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, just the first 2 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you have trouble with the bars, you can turn any one of those chords into just a 4-string chord on the interior and just not play either of the E strings. So even the A7 chord. So from that, we land on a D minor 7, which we can use the exact same fingering and voicing as the E minor 7, just a whole step lower. So instead of 7, 9, 7, 8, we now have 5, 7, 5, 6, and then 5 on the bottom if we want it with the bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Well, really 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. We get the same change to a G7 as with the A7. Same shape again. Instead of 5, 7, 5, 6, 8, we now have 3, 5, 3, 4, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this same sort of little movement, just a whole step apart. That's comping it really square, playing it with a really square rhythm. If you're playing it with an actual ensemble, you're usually not going to play something quite so direct. You know, you're going to mix up the rhythm a little bit more to accentuate the sort of feel of the piece and what the style that the band's playing it in. But right now I'm playing it kind of flat or right on the beat for the most part, just to illustrate kind of how it fits in with the time. My hot tea is cold. Oh well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just got a message from Tim. We ought to see if we can get Tim in here, but Tim probably is too old and grumpy to know how Twitch works. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Tim is the one we really ought to get to play this on saxophone because he can freaking kill this stuff. Alright, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, if we come out of that G7, we come into a C minor 7. The exact same shape as the previous 2 minor 7 chords, just a whole step lower. So now, instead of 5, 7, 5, 6, 3, 5, 3, 4. So it sounds like there's a lot going on, but we're actually using many of the same chord shapes because it's the same kind of cadence. It's still this 2, 5, 2, 5, 2, 5 type thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We make our way down to an F7, same shape as the A7 and the G7, but at the first fret. 1, 3, 1, 2, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just the same 2 chord shapes basically after we leave this first one over and over and over again. So even though it sounds busy, it's not really that bad. Yeah, I wonder how zooming into a live stream would go. I wonder how well that would work. Because I don't know. Might mess with the webcam or something. I don't know if you need multiple cameras or if each program can pull from the camera simultaneously without any kind of conflict or issue. But anyways, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Then we land in a B flat. In this case, they say a B flat 6. You could play a B flat major there. You could play a B flat major 7 there. You could play a B flat 7 there, depending on how strong you want the tension to be. Since this is a blues, a 7 will work fine. A B flat 6 in this position would essentially require us to leave the G string open. I'm probably going to play a 7 there because let's see. Trying to think of how the melody goes over that part, but yeah, I'd probably play a 7 there. Give us a little bit of, maybe a 9. One, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4. How do I want to voice that? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4. I don't like that change. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that works. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we get to that B flat 6 at we could play 1, 3, open 3, something like that. But that voicing's a little sparkly. We could play just a B flat 7, which would be barring down at the first fret, playing 1, 3, 1, 3. We could move that up here because of what's coming next. The changes that are coming afterwards as we move to that E flat are going to be more practical to play up around the 6th fret. So when we get to this F7 here, we can start to transition up the neck into voicings around the 6th fret of the B flat, because just a regular B flat bar chord occurs at the 6th fret. So we could play a B flat 7 there simply by removing our pinky, or adding our pinky down here on the 9th fret on the B string to that. So you can play a B flat 6, 9, 69, bruh. Sorry for that. I apologize. That was terrible. Ranch me, brah. By barring down at the 5th fret. A few different ways we could voice it. This voicing would be kind of cumbersome to get into, though. This is the 1st, 5th, 6th, and 3rd. We could always voice it as a 13th as well, and it won't really hurt anything. Putting it here. I did that one for Keep Watch. Because that's totally his culture. Anyways, I actually like that one. Ba, ba. That makes the transition to, like, say, the E flat 7 really easy. So let's voice it that way. Let's voice the B flat 6 like this. We could throw in our 7 here if we wanted to sound more like a 13. It's nice and juicy. So we have a 6th fret bar. Then the 8th fret with a ring finger on the A string. Then we can bar down that 6th fret and let it ring out with our index finger. Or we can just mute it out completely. Then the 7th fret with our middle finger. 8th fret with our pinky on the B string. That gives us that. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That moves the upper voicing up a little bit more. Moves it up a whole step. It's kind of an interesting sound. As long as we don't play the bottom E string, that moves it up a little too much for my tastes. Then the transition to the E flat 7 that comes next is B flat minor 7, excuse me. Then the E flat 7 that's coming is super, super easy, because all we have to do, lift our middle finger, slide our pinky up for the B flat minor 7, then simply move the root note down and the pinky back down for an easy E flat 7. It's a nice little contraction of the hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Really, 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 really simple. So B flat major 6 or B flat 13 if we include the minor 7 here. 6, 8, 6, optional we'll say, 7, 8. Then B flat minor 7, we could either just take middle finger and pinky off entirely, or we could also just slide the pinky up, depending on what we want that note to do. A few ways we could approach that. Again, still playing it very cut and dry, very kind of square, but on purpose. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Not too bad, really, even though it seems like a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. A little over halfway there as far as the chord changes go. So B flat minor 7, bar down the 6th fret, 8th fret on the A string, and then either pinky on the 9th fret on the B string or completely up so that we're just getting it with the bar. Alright. Then the E flat 7. The easy voicing would be 6, 8, 6, 8. That one is a little boring though, compared to say that one, but we can live with it. Versus that one's a bit harder to change to. It's evidenced by the fact that I screwed up trying to do it. But it does sound cooler. Anyways. B flat minor 7, E flat 7. Then the A minor 7, that'd be very similar to the A7 we played earlier, just minus the middle finger. Or identical voicing to the B flat minor 7 we just played. Down a half step. Ba, ba. Then D7, exact same fingering as the E flat minor 7. So it's taking the same thing we just did and just moving it down a fret. When we're coming from that E flat 7 to the A minor 7, our pinky can stay on the exact same note. That note is connected between them. It's a common tone. Then it comes down a half step. So we go to the D7. Then we get an A flat minor 7. So the same shape as the previous one, just down another half step. And this is another example, one of those non-functional 2-5-1s. Or 2-5s. Anyway, we don't actually get to a 1. That's part of why it's kind of non-functional. And in effect, it's a type of tritone substitution, or an implicit tritone substitution for the G7 that then becomes a G minor 7 in the chart. So this whole little sequence, as we come from the B flat major 6, just becomes kind of the same two shapes, just moving down one fret at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So just kind of crawl down. Ba 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 till we land on the G minor 7, which is the actual 2, and somebody in chat should be able to guess what's going to come after the 2. Anybody who's been paying attention at all for the last few weeks. Two, 5, 1, because if we're in the key of F, F1, G2, A3, B flat 4, C5, ba. So a C7 would typically be our 5 chord, or would be our 5 chord, not just typically. So as we come out of this little descending sequence, no, this is not a minor 2-5-1. This is actually a major 2-5-1. The minor 2-5-1 occurs earlier. That goes from essentially the E7 to the A7 to the D minor 7. Ba, ba, ba. That's a minor 2-5-1. Because what it's doing is it's substituting essentially a bar of the 1 chord for a 2-5-1 into the relative minor. Because the relative minor is effectively interchangeable in many ways with the major chord. They share almost all of the same notes, which is why it's the relative minor. Their scales share exactly the same notes. The chord formulas are almost identical. They're one note different. So you have the 1, then the minor 2-5-1 for the 6, the relative minor, which acts as a 2 for this 5, and sets off a little chain of 2-5-1s. 2, 5. The 2 chord is the 5 of the 5, which is now the 2 of the 1, which is the 5 of the 4, which we then convert to a minor to make it a 2 to the E flat, which is a substitution for the A7, which we then make an A minor 7, so it's a 2 for the D7, which is a substitution for the G flat 7, which we make a G minor 7, so it's a 2 for the D flat 7, which is a substitution for a G7, which is a 2, which would be the 5 of the 5. We're leaving it as a natural 2, so it's a 2, which takes us to the 5. Which then takes us back to the 1. 2, 5, bop. That's the kind of stuff we'll be doing on Music Theory Mondays, but it's so kind of built into understanding a lot of what goes on in jazz in particular that it's kind of hard to get away from talking about it that way. But what I'm talking about are chord progressions or cadences, the way chords change into each other to seek resolution, right? So if I'm playing just like a cut and dry chord progression, and then I change to this chord, your brain is going to start yelling at you the longer I stay on it. Please, please, for the love of God, change off this chord. Resolve the tension this chord creates. Please, 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 please. Resolve by going back here. You can hear that like all of the tension that built up, all of the sourness and sort of pull that it had kind of let go when I went back here. 1. So chord progressions use types of tension, both in terms of dissonances built into the tones contained in the chords, and the dissonances, in a sense, or instability that exists between the relationships, the intervals between the particular notes in a key and the notes involved in a given chord, to create types of tension to push and pull you through the progressions this way. Because, like, say if we tried playing something that had like no tension at all, let's say we played a chord that was just what we call perfect intervals, chords with, or notes with no kind of dissonance at all, they don't ever necessarily create the need to change because there's no instability. They also can get kind of boring. They become kind of drony. But there's nothing in that makes you want to change, but it's not terribly interesting. But the minute I add, let's say, the minute I introduce a note with some kind of dissonance or some kind of harmonic information to it, a non-perfect interval, it really kind of pulls you to the next chord. The 4 and 5 chord, no, the 4 and 5 chord both have tension. The 5 chord in particular is the dominant chord. It has so much tension it kind of forces you to resolve to the 1, generally speaking, because the first inversion of the 5 chord is the leading tone, which is extremely tense and extremely dissonant. But the fourth and fifth intervals, the actual intervals that constitute the relationship from the root of a particular key to the to those chords, the perfect fourth and the perfect fifth, are both perfectly consonant. That's what the perfect means. Let me tilt this a little bit so I can get my left hand in better. So the power chord, that's why the power chord shape is infinitely movable. You can slide it around, do whatever you want with it, because it's perfect. It's essentially just like moving a fattened up or strengthened version of the root around. Doesn't really change anything. The fourth is a little less stable. It's still perfect. It doesn't contain major or minor information. It doesn't contain any really strong dissonance, but it's not as stable as the fifth, because our brain tends to hear it as an inversion of the fifth rather than as a fourth. It has by itself kind of an almost a little bit kind of rumbly. You can hear like the frequencies beating against each other a little bit more than you can with this, which might as well just be a reinforcement of the octave, which is why I say the 3-finger power chord is root perfect fifth octave. Like that. Not very interesting by itself. You know, we start to use it in the right context, it becomes really useful though. But so when we're talking about chord changes and moving through 2-5-1s and stuff like that, what I'm talking about are these specific cadences in terms of how these chords move and connect to each other, how they create a type of tension and then resolve that tension through a movement. So if I just play, say, the F major scale, each note in that scale has a chord that goes with it by default, and there are all kinds of ways we can manipulate that, which is something that's happening in this tune. But if I change from this root chord to what's called the 2 chord, the chord that's based on the second tone of that scale, if I linger on it, your brain is going to kind of want it to go somewhere. It's going to want to either go back down here and resolve, or it's going to want to move to some other chord that then eventually resolves somewhere. The most common movement in jazz, and in a sense most like American popular music, though in a roundabout way, is the 2 chord, the 2nd chord of the scale, to the 5th chord of the scale, back to the 1st chord of the scale. So this sound, ba, 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 dum, or dum, ba, ba, if we want to go up, ba, ba, ba. It's a very consonant type of progression. And what this song is doing is it's taking these 2 5s and it's working them into lots of places where they wouldn't normally occur. It's relating them to chords where we wouldn't normally hear them if we were playing a more traditional or typical version of the chord progression. So instead of playing, say, just like this one's kind of getting around it. And swapping in that cadence in lots and lots and lots and lots of places. Once you get to where you can sort of hear and visualize how those cadences move and start to hear them in tunes that you listen to, then it becomes a lot more sort of clear. But and you can sort of understand why they did this so much, because these guys, the bebop guys, were taking simpler tunes and making them more complex. But in many cases, they were making them more complex by simply swapping in these simple changes that they were used to playing just in more places and higher frequency and faster tempos for the most part. You know, so instead of playing 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, these guys are playing it and 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1. So the tempos go up quite a bit. But they're visualizing this when they're playing it as playing over things that they know how to play over already, this really common cadence. They're just incorporating lots more of them than you would normally get in a regular song. They actually did it quite a bit. They would take old songs and then make new versions of them with more changes added to them and more complexity, called contrafacts. So lots and lots and lots of Charlie Parker tunes in particular are taking old standards, which were usually kind of slow or sweet or romantic or whatever, and then speeding them up and adding lots more changes and complexity to those old songs to get new songs out of them. Like all over the place. So that's what this one's doing, this big string of changes. Are actually just strings of 2-5-1s moving chromatically downwards till we get to the actual 2-5-1 related to the original key. Yeah, some hold music is like super, super, super consonant. You know, it depends on what they want. They usually want you though to stay as calm and relaxed as possible so they can manipulate you with their crappy service. You know, so they'll pick like super smooth jazz that doesn't really have much dissonance in it, or like new age music where everything's trying to be mega mellow. You know, like Enya. Anyways, hopefully that whole ramble there cleared things up a little bit, maybe. This is what Music Theory Mondays are going to be for, though, like getting into foundational stuff. So when we talk about things like this, it's more coherent to people who are watching who aren't like music nerds. Anyways, so we got into the last line of the chart, or pretty much the last line of the chart. We were coming out of that 2 chord, the G minor 7. Then into a C7, or a C7 flat 9. It's a great chord. But, somewhat unusual to use in a major key. It's a lot more common as a 5 chord in a minor key, or changing to a minor chord. So we can take our regular C7. This voicing would be kind of rough if we did it that way. So we're going to flip it around. We're going to take this little 3 finger, 3rd fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, A string, D string, G string version of a 7 chord. We're just going to bar down the 2nd fret. So we get 3, 2, 3, 3, 2. That flat 9 makes it really kind of sour, but it creates a really strong tension down to the 1 chord. So then we have another 2, 5, which is basically just a little turnaround, a little tag at the end. And it has an implied tritone substitution before that too in the parentheses. If you want to get optional, a little A flat diminished ba 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 da. So da 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 da. So our whole chord progression played slowly, right on the beat. 1, 2. Oh, sorry, I was using this fingering for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. And then it all just loops. It just starts over. The exact same sequence again. That last C7 flat 9 chord leaves us hanging. Ba, ba. If we wanted to, we could move that voicing up here to get closer to where we were going. And if you were playing this with a band, you'd start mixing up those voicings. You start changing the particular voicings that you use for a given chord to make things a little more interesting. Because playing the exact same fingering all the way through would get pretty dull. And so we'd start trying to swing it a little more too. And 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. start kind of playing around with the time, syncopating, so on and so forth, rather than playing everything absolutely directly kind of on the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. But that's the skill of what's called comping, which is short for accompaniment. It can make a big difference to the feel of a piece, but it's all going to depend on how the band is playing it around you, the tempo you're playing at, etc. The particular sort of style. If you're doing it Latin style, you'll get a different feel. If you're on and on and on and on. Kind of endless variations. So that's our chord progression. It's not really too bad. It looks like a lot of chords when you look at it, but actually the majority of them tend to be the same, like 2 shapes. 2 or 3 shapes. Very, very similar kind of all the way through. All right. See something. I need to get ready to do the melody in just a minute. If I do this, I'm going to take a quick bathroom break, and then I'll be right back. Let's see, should I just if I turn the webcam off, will I get my background screen, or will I just get a black screen? I don't know. I'm going to turn the webcam off really quick. We're going to see what happens. Yep, just to get a black screen. What happens on the actual stream itself? Yeah, black screen on the stream. Oh, well. All right, we'll turn it back on. But I will be back in just a minute. I'm going to go use the restroom, and then we'll get started on the melody part of the song. All right, back. Yeah, it's gone for like a whole 3 minutes, if that. Running super fast. How do you like my sweet blue pajama pants, blue plaid pajama pants? Haven't put on outside pants since like March. That they are. They are definitely cozy. got I deleted the two old recommendation channels in the Discord because apparently there is no merge or move function yet for some reason, which seems kind of insane. But go repost that stuff. Like I said, repost the stuff you wanted, probably in the Weeb Wednesday channel. That's going to be the best fit for anime and game themes and soundtracks. But a couple of them, I listened to all of them, and a couple of them would actually be pretty good to do. You could rename them, but I had already made, like, I needed the content from both of them ideally, which was, probably like five or six requests, mostly from you and Alec. So I figured you could just, relink them in the new channel. Because I know there was like a Final Fantasy VII one. Is there Chrono Cross or Chrono Trigger or something? Though I do know which one I'm doing, or what I'm doing for the upcoming Wednesday already, though. It's one of my favorite anime themes / animes. Check something real quick and then we'll get going. If there's anybody hanging out who's watching who hasn't followed, we would sure appreciate the follow and appreciate you jumping into our Discord and dropping song requests and recommendations and stuff like that. Because as we do these various theme nights that we have scheduled, I definitely need more than just like stuff I'm pulling out of my own head. Yeah, hop in the Discord there if you give us a follow. And use the channel that's kind of appropriate for the particular sort of style of music. For instance, Metal Monday, obviously more metal and hard rock oriented stuff. We'll be doing. Sometimes we'll probably do whole songs. We'll do riffs. We'll do techniques. We'll do things like dialing in certain kinds of sounds, all that kind of stuff. So it's not just songs specifically. It's going to be sort of all the things surrounding it. And the same with, like, say, Friday Night Jazz. Free for All will alternate all of these every week too with a different theme. So say the alternate for Monday will be Music Theory Monday. Alternate for Wednesday will be doing ambient music. I think I called it Washed Out Wednesday, which, ambient and lo-fi music. Which I guess really is not something that you would do requests for necessarily, but then we're doing the video game and anime themes on Wednesdays, and then Fridays we'll be doing Friday Night Jazz, and then alternating that with essentially Free for All Friday, which would be any style of music, basically anything guitar or music related too, So it doesn't have to be like a specific theme or a specific song, just kind of like super open to whatever, because I wanted to make sure we had a night where we could kind of cover any particular thing without being constrained by a theme, because if you're going to have themes, you might as well commit to them. So I didn't want to like risk turning Metal Mondays into something other than Metal Mondays or Music Theory Mondays. So that's what Free for All Fridays will be for. There's some kind of Foucauldian argument about control of space and time and power and stuff in there, but have the official day for free expression. Alright, so start looking at the melody. I'm going to be reading it from the chart, and I would assume probably that the majority of people watching, at least at this point, are not people who necessarily read music. So I'll be essentially showing you the particular fingerings and phrasings as we go along, telling you what frets they occur at. And it's going to be fun with this one. Alright, so when we start looking at this, we're going to start again at the F chord in the second line. We're going to ignore the piano intro for the time being, just so we can actually get into sort of the main theme. If you were to go listen to it, this is what people would expect you to know as a guitar player or horn player or whatever. But we're starting off with the note F. We have a couple different places we can play that F. The first place most people learn is up here at the first fret on the E string. We could also play it at the 6th fret on the B string, which is where I'm going to play it. We'll talk about why in a minute. The 10th fret on the G string. 15th fret on the D string. And then all the way up to the 20th fret on the A string. That's not a practical place to play it at all. I wouldn't recommend playing it there. But as we start to arrange something like this that's not written for guitar, we have to start looking at the notes and figuring out what fingerings are possible. What are the ways we can actually make this fit onto the instrument, and what ways are going to be comfortable. Because we actually have about 3 different ways really we could finger this. Technically more, but they get less and less practical. But some of them are going to be a lot more natural than others for one hand or both hands. So the particular fingering that I've decided to use for this first little phrase, these first 3 notes, F, C, A, are up here starting at the 6th fret. We're in the 5th position, which means our index finger is going to be playing the C on the 5th fret, and our ring finger is going to be playing the A on the 7th fret on the D string. And what this actually is a triad in reverse. 1, the F, C, the 5, 3 in the bass here, and the A. So it's like a first inversion F major triad, simply starting on the F and moving backwards. If we play that down here, we wind up with this. If we want to do that and get the proper separation between the notes, we have to use 2 separate fingers for the F and C, or try to roll that index finger across between the F and the C. And that's kind of awkward feeling in that position compared to this, where we have 1 finger for each note and we can easily control the sort of length and attack of the note. Also playing up here tends to give us more twang because we're very close to the nut. So you can hear it's much brighter and twangier. Versus a lot jazzier sounding if we play it up here. We could play it up here, but then it starts to get almost muddy. It gets a lot more full. This spot, this position, the 5th position, gives us a nice balance in terms of our sound. It's warm and full enough to still sound jazzy and kind of rich, but it's also not super bright and twangy, and it's not overly dark. That's going to vary somewhat from guitar to guitar and player to player, but it's kind of a general rule. Staying in the middle of the neck tends to give us sort of the most even sound, the most balanced kind of sound. So we have F on the 6th fret on the B string. It's a quarter note. 1. Then we have a pair of 8th notes. C on the 5th fret on the G string. A on the 7th fret on the D string. You work on getting the phrase ba-da, 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 with sort of a swung feel. If we play it with a straight 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 1, 2, and it's a little square feeling. So we have to kind of get 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and kind of get that swing feel in our head. Ba da 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 ba da do ba da ba da 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 do da da do da da do da. Anybody tuning in now will probably be having an interesting experience. Ba da ba da ba da ba da ba da ba da. With the right hand, we're really doing all of that work. The left hand is helping control the length by damping, but the right hand is kind of applying that feel to the notes. You notice that the second eighth note, the A, it's kind of pulled way down dynamically. This is something that Billy Sheehan was talking about, was asking about in one of the last streams, is how do you make something sound jazzy? And it's all in that sort of right hand dynamic, sort of pushing and pulling the notes, deciding which notes are up and which notes are down, which notes really stick out, which notes are quieter and almost kind of buried. There's a really big example of this towards the end of this melody too, which we'll hear. Basically where one note is pulled down so much it essentially doesn't exist. So, F, A, C, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. Then the second phrase in that measure is simply lowering that first note, the F, down to an E. So F, A, C, E, A, C, 1, 2, and 3, 4, and a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a fairly subtle movement. With the right hand, I'm using down, up, up, down, up, up. Some players will strictly alternate and do down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. But I tend to use a lot more economy picking, where if the notes are moving up across the neck, like physically upwards towards the top string, oh, there went my pick somewhere, I'll use upstrokes and then downs for anything moving down. It gives you a more fluid kind of sound than alternating. Alternating gives you a little more consistency. Down, so unnatural to me though. But some players like absolutely strictly insist on alternating everything. But I'm usually looking for more economy of motion and to conserve sort of my playing energy more. Little things like that, though, actually have a really big impact on how someone sounds and on sort of defining a particular player's sound. Say, like a lot of guys that play gypsy jazz from France will use strict alternating and start every single new string, regardless of where you're at, with a downstroke. It always makes sure that whenever they change to a new string, that it has a very, very firm sound, because downstrokes tend to be punchy. Versus upstrokes, which are a little bit softer. You can practice them to get them even, but in isolation, there is a tiny change in character between them. That's starting every new string or every string to string transition with a downstroke. And you got some people like Molly Tuttle who are absolutely incredible at cross picking, which is alternating the pick direction while skipping strings in between. She's amazing at it. That's an incredibly difficult skill to develop, but it has a distinctive sound. A lot of wrist movement, which I don't like, which is why I don't do it much. She tends to play with kind of a locked or fixed sort of wrist position. Anyways, so F, A, C, And when we learn a melody like this, we take it measure by measure and then connect the measures that we've done. So we'll do the first measure, which we got now, then we'll learn the second measure, and then we'll connect it to the first measure, just piece by piece. So the second measure underneath the E minor 7 has a D. This is just a string of all eighth notes here. D natural, E natural, B natural, D natural, D flat. Actually, let's do just that first. Let's just do those first four, like the first four eighth notes, the ones underneath the E minor 7, so we can hear that individual phrase. Da 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 da. So ba da 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 da. D E B D D flat. So I'm playing the D in this case at the 7th fret on the G string, the E at the 5th fret on the B string, and the finger here becomes kind of important because as the tempo goes up, using the wrong finger at or not necessarily the wrong finger, but using a finger that has to move in an awkward way, a finger that might be less efficient, can really make a big difference. So you either have to get to where you can do that D, E to B with a very, very quick squeeze downwards, what's called a squeeze shift, across 2 different frets and 2 strings with the index finger, or you have to shift your hand mid-phrase. Play the D with your pinky, the E with your middle finger, the B with your index finger. Decide which one of those transitions is more efficient for your hand. I'm probably going to stick with the index finger shifting. I might decide to play the D with the pinky though. At full tempo, these notes are really, really brief too. They're pretty quick. Like that. So, F, A, C, E, A, C, D, E, B, D, D flat. So D with the pinky, D flat with the ring finger. Then we have another interesting decision to make in the second half of this particular phrase, because we're going from that D flat and the first right underneath the A7 change at on beat 3 to a B flat. So that's going to give us a big jump. It's going to give us a jump of a minor third. So we either have to finger that by leaping all the way down here to this B flat on the 3rd fret on the G, or stretching up an extra fret from where we were to the B flat on the D string on the 6th, or on the 8th fret. So we get da 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 da. That's the one I'm going to go with. It's the one that fits my hands the best. One that I think keeps the sound the best balanced. So I'm going to reach up to this 8th fret on the D string with my pinky. So we just linger on it like that, we get a fairly strong dissonance, but it's going to continue moving. So what it's going to do is it's going to drop down to G and then come up to A. So in some versions of this chart you'll look at, we'll put in a little chromatic passing tone in between the G and the A. So you get though think if you listen to the original recording, that's not quite there. There might be a little grace note version of it there, like a little tiny one. Very, very, very subtle if it is there. Ba-da-dum. So F, A, C, E, A, C, D, E, B, D, D flat, B flat, G, A. And this A is held across the bar line into the first beat of the next measure underneath that D minor 7. So up to this point, 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. Ba da 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 da. We start to hear the swing sort of come into it there. Right? So those are our first two measures. Right, we come into the measure, the third measure of the main part of the head, which is the D minor 7. We have that A ringing out from the previous measure. And then we have F to D. So this A is ringing out. I'm going to use a pull off there. And this is something where we're emulating the notes sort of pumping up and down with the saxophone, especially a lot of the lower notes in phrases that he'll add will be kind of at the tail end of a breath or a phrase, and they'll be fairly subtle. And by using a pull-off, we kind of get that effect, or we recreate that effect a little bit, rather than actually picking that and articulating those two notes with the pick. This is actually just a little D minor arpeggio in reverse. A, F, D. And you'll find quite a bit that as like song tempos go up in bebop and more complex things, a lot of times the guys are just playing arpeggios of the chords. Because when the tempo gets really fast, there's only so much you can do. You can only think so fast in many cases. So especially at first, like their first main recordings of a tune, they'll just be playing variations of arpeggios and things on top of them. It's a good thing to keep in mind when you're trying to learn to solo on top of things too. When you're trying to learn to improvise, you start with the chord arpeggios rather than trying to think of complex scalar lines, and you'll get something that works at least, and then you can start to embellish it. So alright, then the phrase underneath the G7, G, A, F, E. So the G is right there on the 5th fret on the D string, A, 7th fret on the D string, that same F on the 8th fret on the A string, E on the 7th fret. So it's all kind of in a little box. So ba da 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 da. Right, and that E is actually leading us down into probably one of the toughest spots of the melody here. We have this triplet, this 8th note triplet that kind of blasts by at and we have to use a relatively difficult fingering to really make it work properly, which we'll look at in just a second. So F, A, C, E, A, C, D, E, B, D, D flat, B flat, G, A, F, D, G, A, F, E. Alright, so that gets us to the C minor 7. Alright, that C minor 7 is going to start on the E flat, so it's going to start directly below the E that we just landed on in the previous phrase. And I'm going to use the same finger. I'm going to use my ring finger for both of those notes, when normally I would want to use separate fingers, because the particular phrase for the triplet that's coming up really only works, you could start it with your pinky, but really only works if you start it with either your ring finger or your pinky, and the ring finger is going to be the easiest one to get into it with, but it may be a little bit of a stretch for most people. It depends on your hand size. So we're coming out of that phrase, G, A, F, E, and I'm sliding down to this E flat, then I'm playing F. Now this particular version of the chart actually has a G. The other version of the chart, yeah, there we go. But the real book version of the chart I think has an F there. So we have a G. So we're going to play that with our middle finger. 5th fret on the D string. Then B flat, 3rd fret on the G string. So this is a first inversion of the C minor 7 triad. We could look at it like an E flat major triad in isolation, but it actually has this C as the implied root note, the chord that's underneath it. But it's played as a triplet, an 8th note triplet. So far our 8th notes have been 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and a triplet has to fit into that space, but now instead of being 2 notes fitting into that space, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it's 3 notes fitting into that space. 1 and a da 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 da. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. So instead of being 1 and 2 and, it's 1 and a 1 and a 1 and a 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. So as the tempo goes up, that gets pretty darn quick. And I'm articulating that with my left hand fingers. I'm not just leaving them all down because saxophone can't do that. So I have to get that little bit of separation by pulsing the left hand fingers in time with the right hand. This, by the way, is the fundamental idea of sweep picking. If anybody's watching who knows what sweep picking is. Kind of an awkward place to do it. It's usually done higher up than that. But I'm synchronizing the left hand movements, the left hand string depressions, with the right hand down, 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 to get this triplet, 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 triplet. Then the 8th note couplet right after that is just D to D flat, and I'm doing that just with my pinky. We could do the D on the B string with our index finger, but it sounds kind of strange, like the quality going from the B string to the G string is a little off. The B string tends to pop a little bit, versus it's much more even sounding doing them on the same string that way. So depending on how fast you're playing it, you can vary the sort of distance between and the amount of blending between the fingers, like how quickly you take the fingers off or you start to release the pressure from those. That's probably the toughest thing to get really in the entire song, just to get that kind of smooth and to get that transition. So right. Then the second half underneath the F7 in that measure, we have another little triplet. We have an 8th note, then an 8th note triplet. F, F, G, F. And I use a hammer-on and a pull-off, basically like a mordant or like almost like a trill, but instead of staying on it and trilling like that, I go on, off. This is why I need a higher frame rate camera so that doesn't get all blurry. But, so I'm just doing that with my index finger because my index finger is already on the B flat right above the F, so I just have to roll it down. Yeah. So. Right. That leads us into, let's see, interesting little fingering here. Little bit of a stretch. C, B flat, F, so 5th fret on the G, 3rd fret on the G, 3rd fret on the D, then we have A flat, which I'm going to play at the 6th fret on the D, and then B flat, 6th fret on the E. So we have a little string skip. Both on the same fret. I'm going to use a down for the A flat, up for the B flat. So like down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So da 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 do, da 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 do, ba da ba da do da 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 da. It's pretty tough once you start trying to play it at tempo. Right, and I'm using pinky for the A flat, ring finger for the B flat. Because I'm trying to stay in like a 4-fret box for the most part, but I have to stretch that ring finger up here. Because otherwise you'd be trying to shift that pinky across the 2 strings. And that's pretty rough, especially at tempo. Yeah, be really, like, not impossible, but very, very difficult to do consistently and cleanly unless you practiced it a ton. So. Each little measure that we learn, each little phrase that we learn, we then tack on to the previous one. So every time we get one done, we add it up, we build it, build it, build it, build it, build it, build it, till we can get all the way through. Right? So that's underneath that's the C7, C minor 7 to F7 measure to B flat. So that's over that B flat there. Right in the middle of the tune, pretty much. Then towards the end of that phrase, we're going to get underneath the B minor 7 to E flat 7, but starting on the and of the 4 of the previous measure, the B flat measure, we're starting with a G, which you're just going to play at the 5th fret on the D string. We're going to reach up to E flat on the 6th fret, or no, excuse me, 8th fret of the G string. We're going to come down to D flat, which will be on the 6th. Then B flat, 6th or 8th fret on the D string, G natural again. So and 1 and 2 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 and ba da ba da 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 da. da-da-da-dun, da-da-da-da-dun, 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 da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-dum. Then we'll just roll our index finger up to the C natural underneath the E flat 7. Right, and that C natural is going to start the little second pair of 8 notes there, or the second group of 8 notes, but for the 3 and 4 and. C natural, F natural, G natural, A natural. Ba-da-da-dum. So we can actually see an F major triad or an F major arpeggio in this, starting on the 5 or the 5th, the C natural here, 5th fret on the G string, jumping up to the F with our pinky on the 8th fret on the A string, G natural, 5th fret on the D string, A natural, 7th fret on the D string. So da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da. 3 and a 4, 3 and a 4, and that A natural is going to be held across the measure. So if we put that whole phrase together, starting with the and of 4 in the previous measure, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and my left hand is barely moving. It looks like there's a lot of notes coming out, but the left hand is really not changing much at all because it's all in a 4 fret box. The only awkward thing for most people is going to be having their pinky up here. That weirds a lot of people out at first. You're used to your pinky being kind of below physically compared to your index finger, but we have to flip it up to the top. Otherwise, we have to make a big shift or a big transition to make this work. Hey, Keep, can you kill the spammer there? Not interested in any such nonsense. You know, channel grows organically or it doesn't grow at all. Not really interested in being a fake influencer. Or really an influencer at all, but should be able to I don't know if I can. I might be able to do it. I don't know. Let me see. Ba-da-ba. No, can't do it from here. Do it from the mod control panel somehow. Chat settings, mod view. There we go. Ba-da-ba. Users in chats. Give me just a second, guys. We will figure out how to do this. Oh, you're not going to show me the old. Yeah, so there's got to be some way to do this. So that's what I did. I went to mod view 2 and I can't see. Can't see deleted messages, brief, pause, chat, non-mod settings, pop out. Well, I'm going to have to figure out how to do this. Seems like the thing that AutoMod should have caught. But, there's got to be some way to do it. Maybe if I click the user or something. Hold on a second. Let me try this. Let's. Okay, so inside of here, I can block them. Can I ban them? Mod. Okay, I can mod him. Timeout. There we go. Okay. So inside Streamlabs, there's a way to do it. All right. And then get banned, son. Let's see. There we go. Do that. Okay, cool. We can actually do that all entirely from inside Streamlabs. Whee! I did not grant moderator privileges to him. What the balls? And then let's go over here. Hold on a minute. Got to do some administration stuff. Yeah. Let me go check this here. Let me hit this. Already did that. Now can I get rid of him here? Alright. Well, we'll see how it goes. They're all the little icons are like right next to each other, so it's entirely possible just using the touchpad that I could have bumped it or something. So yeah, alright. That's about all I can do with it right now. I have to go into Role Manager or whatever in the dashboard. See what we can do with it. Alright. Escape that. Okay. So let's see, where do we get to? We are at we're doing that descending. So we're at that B flat minor 7. G, E flat, D flat, B flat, G, C, F, G, A. So, yeah, thrown off. So down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. All right, we're coming out of that A, being held across the measure into the A minor 7. And so we're holding that A down with our ring finger, coming down to an E natural on the 7th fret on the A string, then a low C with our pinky. So this is keeping us in this 5th position, this little 4-fret box here. Otherwise, you'd have to jump all the way down to this low C here on the 3rd fret on the A string. So, so I'm using ring finger, middle finger, pinky, index finger for the D natural. And that D natural is staccato. That little dot over the note means it's staccato. Then we have an interesting shift. That's where we get that A flat minor 7 to D flat minor 7, which, as we talked about, was sort of a non-functional 2-5-1. He matches up the melody to those two chords, so it sounds kind of like we're jumping out of the key a little bit, because in a sense we are. In a certain way. So we come up to this D flat here, 6th fret on the G string. We give that note a little bit of an accent. Sure thing, dude. So that measure coming out of the A, ba da 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 ba da 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 da. And you may notice, and I don't know how annoying it comes across on stream, but you may notice that I'm actually like singing these melody lines along with what I'm playing. That is one of the single most useful and beneficial things you can do when you're trying to learn really the melody of anything, but especially with more complex stuff, at all these jazz tunes and stuff. Sing the melody along with it as best you're able to. That can really help you get the timing down, get the phrasing down. And your brain and your fingers will start to sort of align themselves after a while. And when you sort of think of something to sing, they'll kind of line up with each other. So in this case, I'm sort of hearing in my head, I'm singing ba da 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 ba da 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 ba da 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 ba da 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 ba da da da. So that second phrase, that second half of the phrase, D flat, D flat, C flat, which is B natural. But we have to call it that for the nature of the chord. Since we're using an A flat minor 7, it has to be a C flat, because a B natural would be a 9 instead of a minor third. Right? D flat, C flat, da, 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 da. And where did we get? Hold on, lost my place. Da, da, da. There we go. So D flat, C flat, E flat. That E flat is the 6th fret on the A string. So it's sort of similar to what the fingering we did earlier with it, but on a different string. So D flat, C flat, E flat. Then we have a B flat again. So that B flat we can either choose to play with our index finger, 3rd fret on the G string, or we could reach up and play it on the 8th fret, which is where we've mostly played it before, the 8th fret on the D string. Which is where I'm going to play it, even though it's a little bit more of a stretch. Especially if you use your ring finger for the E flat. If you use your middle finger for the E flat, it's not so bad. But I'm going to use that because of the notes that are coming up next. The next sort of line or measure here. It's going to make it a lot easier to sort of get through that, or to transition into from the B flat being played here. This next section. So ba 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 da 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 da. There we go. And so I'm using down, up, up, down, up, up, down, 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 down, up, up, down. And we want that first D flat to really stick out. While we want that low E flat there to be really subtle. Right? The next measure is another interesting one in that we're starting off on the and of the 4 with a simple A flat, 6th fret on the D string. Then we're going down to the G natural, but this is part of a quarter note triplet. And quarter note triplets are really, really, really odd to count. You more just kind of have to sort of learn to feel them. And listen to examples of people playing them. They're not quite as easy to count as, like, say, an 8th note triplet is, where you can go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and but quarter note triplets are occupying the space of 2 quarter notes with 3 as a quarter note triplet. 1. Well, I'll say the 8th note triplet would be. We have to fit this 3 grouping over the space of 2. It's pretty unusual. But once you hear it, once you hear it in a song, once you hear people using it a lot, you get to where you can kind of feel it. So we're going from A flat with our middle finger on the 6th fret on the D string down to the G natural with our index finger, 5th fret, same string. That's the beginning of this triplet. And then we slide up into F natural, which is what the little swoops mean on the sheet music. If you look at those F naturals right there underneath the G minor 7. So we kind of slip up into them. And I'm just sliding up right from the E underneath on the 5th fret. So da, 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 coming from the previous phrase. That's the E on the 5th fret on the B string. Just right below it, immediately below it. When we see that the little glissando sign like that, we can just make a little subtle slip. You don't have to make a huge one. You don't really have time to do it anyway. So da 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 da. 1, 2, 3, ba ba da. It's almost like juxtaposing, like a little short bar of 3 on top of 2. That type of feel. I don't know if you could hear that tapping through the microphone or not, but. Right? When we come out of that, we stay on that F. And we have just kind of a normal 8th note phrase back into sort of a regular 8th note feel for the 3 and 4 and. This is F natural, D natural, so F on the 6th fret, just like we started with. D natural on the 7th fret on the G string. B flat, 8th fret, just like the one we played in the previous measure on the D string. Then a D natural down here on the 5th fret on the A string, so a low D natural. But that one, when you listen to the tune, it's very subtle. It's just kind of, it's on that upbeat there. It's almost like an up breath. So. It's more about kind of setting up the movement into the next phrase. So right, that's where we're up to now. The end of the G minor 7 phrase. We just got that low D natural. We're going to be going into the C7 flat 9 phrase. So the last line of the piece. Right? So after that D natural, we have A natural, 7th fret on the D string. G natural, right below that on the 5th fret. C natural, 5th fret on the G string. B flat, 8th fret on the D string. So little 4 fret grouping, 2 strings. 7th fret, 5th fret, A, G, C, B flat. And we might as well get the E flat up there too, since it's still basically the last important note of this phrase. That E flat's just the 7th fret on the G string. So 7th fret A, 5th fret G, 5th fret C, 8th fret B flat, 8th fret E flat. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 ba da 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 da. It's one of those phrases that's super easy, but if you try to like think about it when you do it, it becomes way harder than it actually is. It's got this sort of stair step effect almost. And I'm using like down, up, or down, up, down, up, down. You could start it with either one though. Up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down. You have to change directions in the middle. So. Almost there. Ba-da-bum. Starting at the very end of that measure and running over into the F major 7, which is what that delta sign, that triangle sign means. That means a major 7, F major 7 chord. We have a C natural, then we have A natural, D natural, G. So we get ba da 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 da. Oh wait, sorry, that's E natural. Da 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 da. C A E G. But remember earlier I spoke about how there's one point where we have a note that's so subtle that it's basically not there. When you listen to the original recording of this song with Charlie Parker playing it, that E natural basically doesn't come out. Like he's essentially blowing it, but it's like tailed off so dramatically that you don't really even hear it. All you really hear is ba da da ba da 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 da. It's like a ghost note of a ghost note. Ba da 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 da. Like it's barely there. And no one would hold it against you if you just left it out entirely. Or if you played an F natural there instead. Like super subtle. You just completely leave it out. You just hold the A slightly longer. It's like a silent letter, like some silent letters at the beginning of words where technically you voice the shape or you make the shape with your mouth, but you don't ever actually produce it. That similar kind of idea. Or to put it in drummer terms, you have like flams and ghost notes, which are like super tiny, basically where you get the note really predominantly after the motion, like slightly after, fractionally afterwards. Same idea here. Ba da da ba da da ba da 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 da. So C A, then we'll put the E in parentheses, and then G. So. One more phrase, and we're there. The final phrase, the D natural, starting on the and of 4 in the next to last measure, holding across to the 1, B flat, the D natural on the A string, A, 7th fret on the D string. And that low D is pretty subtle as well, not as subtle as the previous E in the same position. So those last two phrases together. That's it. That's the whole melody. Pretty tough. But if you break it down into little chunks, that. You start to get to where you can put it together. And as you get better at each phrase, you start to speed the tempo up a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. Eventually your hands just start to kind of do them automatically. And as I mentioned earlier, the more you actively think about it, the worse you tend to play it. Like if you're really trying to consciously think like, okay, E flat, you know, or what finger is going where in the moment as you attempt to play it, it tends to fall apart. You have to do all that like sort of beforehand. You read the phrase and learn it slowly and individually, and then you try to put it at tempo, or you try to speed it up at least. You sort of stop thinking about that and you start thinking more about the actual melody itself. That low D there, man. There we go. And the solo starts to come in. After that, though we're not really talking so much about the soloing tonight. Tonight's more about just getting the basic parts of the song down. So we have the changes. Ba, ba, ba. Right, and then our melody, and a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3, 4. You just keep doing it over and over and over and over and over again. You pull up the tune, you play along with it. YouTube has the ability to slow stuff down, to put things down to like, say, you know, 75% speed. 50% speed starts to sound really weird. You start to get way more artifacts and problems with it. It's kind of unpleasant to listen to. But you can certainly do it. You know, to get to where you can play along with it. But 75% is pretty good. Like, it's not too bad. If you can play each individual phrase roughly, you know, at tempo, then it's not too bad, usually at 75% speed. It actually becomes harder for me to play it at slow now that I kind of know it. Because then you start to think about it. Thinking is evil. Thinking actively works against your ability to play the thing. Yeah, see? You just keep thinking about that, like thinking about that particular thing. That's not the phrase at all. Yeah, can't think. Just have to do. No, seriously, like you just go blank faced and look off into space somewhere, and you can pretty much play it. But the minute you start thinking like, where am I at? What am I doing? What note am I playing? All just falls apart. That becomes even more important when you're improvising. Like it's completely crippling when you try to improvise, at and you actively think about it because your brain just can't keep up with it that way. Your brain's trying to plan in advance for what's coming up instead of letting you sort of your hand and your ears do the work. You know. Well, I mean, that's the thing, though, is that nobody really thinks about it and plays at the same time. You do the thinking before you play. You do the thinking kind of while you're learning it, while you're trying to understand it. But when you're actually playing, you're kind of on a type of autopilot. You're letting other senses that work faster do the work. Because that sort of translation, that delay in translation from what's going on in your brain in terms of active thinking and what comes out of your hands is just too great. You know, your brain can kind of unconsciously over time start to understand, you know, how particular conventions work, how things are supposed to sound, what particular finger movements are going to produce what sounds, etc., etc. And then those start to come out and they start to do the job because you don't think about those consciously as much. You start thinking in terms of sounds and feels rather than like, well, okay, this is a chord that has E flat and it has B flat and it has D flat and it has, you know, that's basically impossible as the complexity of the music goes up. Plus, it also tends to disconnect you from the music, you know. It's basically adding like an extra layer on top of the sort of processing that you eventually can kind of do unconsciously. I mean, there you go. That was pretty much a tempo. Not even thinking, just kind of singing the melody along with it, and then suddenly it all worked. Rather than like me trying to engage and go like, okay, wait, which part am I at? Okay, well, my fingers need to do this. The minute you do that, you're gone. You've lost it. But fun things to do, even if you can't play it at tempo, take them and start mixing up the feel of the thing too. You know, start playing around with the sort of time of it. So instead of just going straight, there goes the stupid thinking again. Right there at the tail end, but start playing everything staccato. You'll start to find like all kinds of interesting ways you can experiment with the phrasing. That will roll over into your ability to improvise, to solo on top of it, to internalize the piece. Once you've got the different phrases down enough to where you can kind of play with their time and play with their feel, like push and pull them, play them across the beat, play them staccato, play them marcato, play them tenuto, etc., 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 you'll start to really get them internalized. And the same with the chords. Once you start to sort of branch out with voicings and rhythms that you're playing with it, so instead of just playing, you know, you start playing with where they fall, you know, how they line up with the time and with the feel of what's being played, which ones you're holding, which particular fingerings and voicings you're using, which extensions you're using, on and on and on and on. You'll start to kind of put that thing together inside of your own head. You won't have to think as much. You can let the sort of autopilot take over. So there it is again. You can hear the chord progression kind of come out in that as well. You know, F major, 7. Then suddenly we have this E minor 7 sound because the D natural in the melody is the minor 7th of the E chord. So all that little phrase is, it's just variations of like an E minor 7 arpeggio. And then the A7 there when we land on the D flat. Technically it's C sharp, but that's actually a gripe I should have with this chart, is that it maintains the correct inharmonic notes later on, but at that part it doesn't. But as it goes through each one of those phrases, you can actually hear it's predominantly chord tones are working around the chord tones to create the sort of appropriate harmony with it. In a lot of cases, again, they're just arpeggios. But da 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 da. So there's like a flat 9, an A7 flat 9 sound. Da da da. Minor 7 up to the root. Da 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 da. And then down into a D minor 7 arpeggio. Da 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 da. Then into essentially a spin of a G7. This 1 9 minor 7. So we're kind of implying like a G9 voicing there with that arpeggio. Then we get to the triplet, which is a first inversion of a C minor 7 arpeggio. Then up to the minor 9th, and then this takes us down. So that's all we're really doing in most cases. We're playing arpeggios, we're playing scalar lines that align directly with the chords themselves. But because of the tempo that they're played at, the movement through the chords, the fact that a lot of the chords are non-functional, it sounds like there's tons and tons of really busy stuff going on, but in terms of harmonic analysis, it's usually not really that complicated. Like this piece isn't even all that chromatic. That particular note there is one of the, like an augmented first in the way that it's treated, which is pretty unusual. It should probably be written as a flat. I don't know why they decided to write it that way there, unless they're... No, they should have written it as a flat. Then we change to an F7 chord, and we literally just have the root to the 9th and back. Then to the B flat chord. We have the 9 of the B flat. Ba ba boom. So like 9 1 2 minor 7. Ba da da. Ba ba. So again, it's all just, we could do this maybe for a music theory day or something where we actually like do a full harmonic analysis of the melody of a particular tune and how it aligns with the chords. This is probably getting pretty dry for most of the people watching, though maybe most of the people watching are interested in dry things, given that they put up with going through like the full chord changes and the full melody of a bebop tune. Well, let's see, where was that? But ba 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 da da doo. 9 1 5 minor 7 1 6 ba 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 4 da, 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 da. So that's actually implying like a B minor 6. Then a major, a 6, another 6 chord actually. Root da, ba, da, ba, da, do, da. So that's actually just another arpeggio. 1 5 3, and then when it changes to the 4, it actually changes to the 4 chord there, the D7. Ba, 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 da. Then we have that non-harmonic or non-functional 2 5 1 4 4 3 5 4 3 5 ba, ba. We land on the 6 of the next chord, down to the 1, up to the minor 7th. minor 7, 5, minor third, 5. So that's super harmonic. Just starts off on that little flat 9. Then building up, 6, 5, 6, 5, 1, dominant 7, ba, sharp 9. That's interesting. It's the voicing of the chord they write, it's a flat 9, but then we land on that sharp 9 on the actual melody tone. And that's just an F major 7 arpeggio again. 5, 3, 7, 9, da 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 ba ba ba. I guess if we want to play the diminished chord there, we have to take a little more into account. But then 5, when we get to the G minor 7, 5, 3, 5, 9, da 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 da. So yeah, I mean, aside from these occasional 9s, this is almost exclusively like 1, 3, 5, 7 arpeggios in different variations. You know, for as busy and complex as it sounds, that's all that's really happening. But it's all the extra 2, 5, 1s that are added to the chord progression that make that possible. If we just did that on top of a straight blues, it would sound crazy busy and like what the heck is going on. But by swapping in all these extra 2 5s, a 2 5 for the 6, non-functional 2 5s, 2 5s for the 2, on and on and on and on, that we get all these opportunities for new arpeggios and new phrases that sound really busy. And when you start to solo, we think in a lot of those same terms. But almost. And any of those notes that are held out, you can slide up into like that. You get a cool little ghost note effect slipping up into them and makes them sound, you know, a little more slick. Oh, tone control a little too far down, getting into Pat Metheny tone. Nope. That's interesting to finger. Especially if you're trying to control it. If you don't articulate it, they all kind of run into each other. It's a pretty sounding chord, but it's very hard to get to distinguish the notes clearly. Nope. Gotta stop thinking about it. problem is the minute you say I got to stop thinking about it, then you think about it harder. And then it just gets worse. You create like a downward spiral inside your own head. This is gonna like bomb from here on out. Yep. Yep. Can't play it at all anymore. See? Let it get inside my head. Thought about it too much. Thought about the mistake that I made. Oh man. But that's what you do, piece by piece by piece, memorize, 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 piece by piece, measure by measure, phrase by phrase, till they start kind of coming out. There we go. Woo! All right. Sometimes it does, man. Like sometimes just repeating ideas, you stumble across like mistakes that sound interesting, and they take you somewhere else. I mean, that's the old stupid musician joke, you know. So that if you screw up once, it's a mistake. If you do it again, then it's jazz. Which, I mean, many a song has been written by people like screwing up at somebody else's song or somebody else's solo, you know, trying to sit around and figure out how somebody does something and then not really getting it right, but in the process kind of discovering your own thing, you know, your own phrase, your own style. That's where, you know, my style comes from. That's where everybody that has a style got it from in a certain sense, you know. With the exception of some people who, you know, are clearly sitting out to sort of slavishly emulate someone else. But pretty much everything about my playing style has come from like trying to figure out like, okay, how'd so and so do that? And then, you know, trying to work it out, but not really getting it, you know, not getting it exactly the way they did it. And then it kind of turns into your own thing. Yeah, Keith, that's cool. We're going to wrap up here in a couple minutes anyway. I was trying to keep the stream length around 3 hours, and we're coming up on 2:49, or we're at 2:49, so probably going to call it here in a minute anyway. Yeah, dude, I'm going to play PlanetSide in a minute. If you want to get on. Yeah, I've been playing it pretty regularly, like the last few nights. Or, well, last few weeks, actually. Well, I guess a month and a half or more now. About whenever the whole, maybe middle of March, when the whole sort of quarantine thing started, I've been playing PlanetSide just about every night. I think I'm up to like battle rank 72 or something. I haven't seen you on, dude. But if anybody's watching, that hasn't followed, we surely would appreciate your follow. And thank you for hanging out with us, listening to me work through this. Sometimes we'll be playing songs that I know really well. Other times, in this case, it's songs that you know I really wanted to work on and I wanted to practice. And we certainly appreciate everybody hanging out while I kind of learn the song along with you. But, and keep, if you're still there and still listening, drop that Discord link, because we want our followers to jump into the Discord with us and give me song recommendations, because we're going to be doing more of these kind of theme nights at every other week. So a jazz night like Friday Jazz, etc., Metal Monday, so on and so forth. So if you got specific song recommendations, all right. So that okay, so Chatbot, I don't know if I can get to it in Streamlabs, but I know I can get to it through the mod panel. So I need to set that up, or one of us needs to set that up somehow. Figure out how to do that. Get that Discord posted. Keep it up. But hop in that Discord. If you got song recommendations or suggestions, I would love to hear them, for a variety, for whatever sort of genre or style of music you're interested in. Does not matter to me. I play pretty much everything. I mean, I've got some pedals and stuff that can actually make some legit bleep bloop sounds. In a pretty literal sense. Oh yeah, Keep. I saw you made some more clips, and I appreciate that too. Some actual guitar-oriented clips instead of just stupid jokes or stupid one-liners. They're not even jokes. So close. Almost had it at tempo. Almost. A little more practice and I'll get it. There we go. That was pretty good. Yeah, Keep just spent like all of like a couple months ago building himself a gaming PC so he can be an elite gamer. I mean, I probably would play Planet Side on PC if I could transfer my character, but I do not have the heart to start a whole new character and regrind all of that. And they don't have like a transfer off. Most of these games have an option where you could transfer your PC to the PS4, like Warframe has that, so on and so forth. But Sony doesn't like to let accounts go, apparently, so you can't go back the opposite direction in most of them, or any of them that I know of. Let me go ahead and pull that from the screen. Need to look into getting like get some kind of software where I can actually like put the music into the software and then actively control like what part we're looking at on screen. But I don't know if Sibelius or anything like what you would want to use for that. Because being able to actually like point out or indicate the particular spot on screen that we're working on would be really handy. Coming right up on 3 hours. Really appreciate everybody hanging out at Keep and Hype and Twisty and Pan. I can see Pan in the viewer chat thing. And as I said, anybody, if you've been hanging out with us, you've been having fun. We do this Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Started a new thing where we're going to be doing theme days. You can see it in the schedule down there. We got a Discord as posted right above in the chat. So if you would, please throw us that follow. That'd be great as we're kind of working our way towards affiliate or whatever it is. Building a community in the Discord, and feel free to jump in there and drop in your song requests and stuff like that for the different theme days. Again, thanks everybody for hanging out. Thanks everybody for chatting. I'm going to type a little message in the chat here. Let's see. And then we'll be signing off for the evening because my shoulder is getting tired. This guitar is heavy. See y'all next time. All right, guys. I'll catch you next time.